Bridgit Danner, and this is my friend Casey Kochmer. I think I got that right. Yeah, who's been a coach of mine for about 6 months now. And he and his wife do some great work. They're based in Hawaii. They work with clients all over the globe, and their work is really unique. So I wanted to introduce them to you. He doesn't just work with health, which I know is our kind of typical topic. It's a little broader than that. So we will cover health today, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting to cover some specialized things Casey has taught me for the time around COVID and all the changes happening in our world. So I thought we'd introduce that a bit. But Casey, can you just talk about your work history, your life history, and what brought you to this point?
So I'm a Taoist teacher. I teach around the world. We work in 15 countries. I was trained to be a healer by my dad. My dad was a country doctor. So those old 1950s black bag country doctors that would go out and deliver babies, that was my father. He taught me how to heal. He taught me how to work with people. And because he also, in the early 70s, I asked him what he thought about the medical system and HMOs and the new laws that Richard Nixon just passed. And he said, Casey, they're going to destroy the medical establishment with these new processes they're doing. And he nailed it. Actually, he got it right. And because of that, I actually decided not to get a medical degree. Instead, I became an engineer and a physicist, of all things. So I'm actually trained as a scientist and as a physicist. And I went to build B-2 bombers, and I went to build health systems, and I built like the national health system that's used in a lot of different states. I worked in disease tracking, so I built the disease tracking system in the state of Washington. So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different fields, which I use. And what happened is people kept coming to me for advice or healing or to help them solve problems, because I'm a Taoist, and you flow with life. You help life be kind around you. So the motto is be kind, quite honestly. And so people just kept coming to me. And when I was younger, people would say, oh, you're just going to be on the mountain one day. And I said, go away, leave me alone. I just want to do my thing. And ironically, here I am on the world's largest mountain next to a waterfall teaching, which is kind of ironic that I came all the way around. But the fact is, back in the 90s, I saw where things were going. And I realized the answer was to teach kindness and to teach people to be more holistic and to really revise how they live. Because I worked in disease tracking, quite honestly, everyone in the disease tracking community knew what was happening or what was going to come down the pipe. We didn't know which disease, we didn't know what year, but what's happening now, we all knew this was coming. And so there was a lot of us who moved or shifted relative to that. That's one of the reasons I'm in Hawaii, actually, because we figured it would be one of the safer places to be when pandemics began to rage. But what we do is a lot. We help people live holistically. We help people transform. We help people live a stronger life. And we teach people to live kinder. And that solves a lot of problems, not just health problems. So it just evolved back. It circled back around because people kept coming back. And I realized I needed to begin teaching kindness because that was the answer to help resolve some of the problems in the world and to prevent people from losing hope. So back in 2005, we rebuilt this business, the Personal Tao and the One River business, and we've just been doing this for the last 15 years now.
Awesome. So you're talking a little bit about Taoism, so I thought we could define it a bit more, talking a lot about kindness. And if you think about that word, it could be extended to a lot of things: kindness to yourself, kindness to the planet. What I've learned a lot from you was about sort of going with the flow and realizing that life has its twists and turns, and that's normal. But you've also kind of helped teach me about boundaries and strength, which is maybe kindness to self. But I don't know. You tell me more. You're the Taoist. How would you introduce it to people if people are just learning?
For Taoism, there's several parts of Taoism. The first part of Taoism teaches a person to be themselves. So the practice, the destination isn't something external. The destination is you. So all the teachings are revolved around helping you live as strong and as kind of a life as possible. Now, kindness is not to be nice. And we call it the three treasures in Taoism. The first treasure is kindness. And kindness means to be in essence. So it's actually to give and take. So when people are nice, you're only giving and you're only giving. And if you only give, you burn out. So you have to counterbalance this. It's give and take. And you have to work with the essence of the situation. So if you're working with someone who wants to fight, being nice to them is going to cause them to fight you more. However, if you're working with someone whose essence is to fight and you fight them, and you fight them in a way that's respectful, they'll actually respect you and then become a friend because you're working with them in their essence.
Interesting.
So you work with everything in the essence of the situation, the essence of the story, the essence of the flow, the essence of the crisis. And that allows you to be, instead of assuming something or working against a wrong story, you actually can work at the roots of the problem and get to solutions faster. So that's the first treasure. Second treasure is modesty. You do things small, simple, and evolve and change. So you do something small, you test, and you revise. So you don't make big sweeping changes. You are modest in your steps. So that way, no one step is enough to hurt you, but each step you can learn against. And then the last treasure would be non-judgment. And judgment is measurement. Do not measure and box something so you don't have other options later. So we teach awareness around that, and then we teach how to work with that. So that's Taoism in a nutshell. But if you were to tell it to a normal person, you would say Taoism is a practice to help you live a better story, to take control of your life stories, and to be kind.
Okay, so kindness, modesty, non-judgment. Did I get them?
Those are the three treasures.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure I put it out there. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, and I think of applying these to what I've seen you help me apply them to is to relationships, to my career, we've talked about, health, we've talked about, you and I. And then, yeah, I just wanted to take a little look at like this bigger picture of change in the world. And it is so interesting that you studied, disease tracking, because you really are in a unique position. And then I remember in the spring, you were like, well, just wait till all the fires come. And I was like, oh God, I can't even hear this, and lo and behold, all the fires came. So you really seem to have some insight on these patterns. And you've taught me, and you kind of host a community, you don't just do private coaching, kind of taught us about sort of how to navigate, and maybe, so we don't get too in the weeds here, maybe just touch on like, the bigger opportunity for transformation right now as the world is changing so much.
So we work in transformation, which means we actually help people in every aspect of life. We help people change their jobs, we help people move, we help people work through illness, we help people work through family issues, relationship issues, because in kindness, we are all of that. So we don't work in a vacuum, we work with it all. Now, the big thing is we are working and living in a time of transformation. And that means the fundamentals around us are shifting. And this has been building up for a while. This isn't coming out of a vacuum. So if you've been watching since the 70s or 60s or even the 50s, you could see the patterns that were in play and where they were going. And we just happen to be reaching a point of greater change. People don't do well with change. And people tend to look to the past to base what they want to do in the future. So on average, people are past oriented rather than future oriented. And that works really well when society is orderly. It works really well when everything is moving along on a predictable track. However, we've reached the end of the particular track we're on, which is causing a problem because you can't look at the past anymore to predict what's going to happen in the future. And so it's throwing a lot of people off. But the patterns are still there. We can still see the stories in play. We can still see the flows. So we can still predict quite a bit of what's happening. But what's interesting about this decade is a time of great change. And because it's a time of great change, it means that what's up ahead won't look like what's behind us. So a lot of people are going to hunker down. If you're hunkering down, you're getting further and further behind. And so it's really important to be proactive in how you live. A lot of people are going to be hunkering down. I'm a scientist, and a lot of people in the scientific community are actually fearful of the future. And in that fear, they're stopping their action. So yes, there are a lot of big bumps ahead, but we can't let the fear of those bumps stop us from being proactive. We still need
Mm.
hope. We still need to be proactive and modestly change. Change on change is powerful. So a
Mm.
lot of people have given up. And the truth is, I'm here to tell you, don't give up. Use the energy. Use this time to become more in tune to what you really need. Be aware of what's happening and use it. Don't be afraid of it. Have hope and continue to build a better world, because we can make it. While we can't make what we had before, we still can make something new. We still can head towards something better. We're not heading towards a utopia. We're heading towards change. And
Mm.
we have a say in that change. If we give up our change ourselves, then we don't have a say, and we get given what's been built by other people. So one of the things I taught Bridgit is take control of your healthcare. And in other words, the healthcare system is based on patterns, but the patterns are based on the old stuff. And if you don't fall in the routine that the healthcare system has based its data on, it's not going to do a very good job of helping you. So the only expert of you is you. So one of the things I taught Bridgit is how to be her own expert, how to track her own process. So that way she's not relying on an outside expert to tell her what to do, because all the outside experts are going to be wrong right now because everything's changing.
Mm.
So this is a really good time to slowly wake up, to slowly become your own expert and track your changes and be proactive in becoming a better person. That's very Taoist.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I'll speak to a couple of things you said there about first being proactive. Yeah, I think that in my whole lifetime, and probably everyone on the call, there's really no other time like this where you kind of know like things aren't going to go back to a way they were, but you don't really know where they're going either. Um, and yeah, it's you can kind of just like take a time out. But I know I was sharing with you, like I was starting to feel really frustrated in my business because I felt like we weren't like having new projects and moving ahead, and there was just some stagnation for a while. But now, luckily, we are, and it's just so important to feel, for me anyway, probably for everyone, that I'm moving ahead with something. And sometimes now in COVID, like, I've had friends close down their yoga studios or friends change their careers. It's not always like luckily for me, I got to move ahead with a career I love, but some people are like letting go of a thing, whether it's career, relationship, a home, whatever, because this is generating some change, but that change doesn't have to be a negative necessarily.
Exactly.
It's just change. So
one thing that's really important, one of the things we can predict based on the current patterns is the following. 2020 is not a be-all, end-all year. 2020 is just a practice year. Consider that for a second. 2020 is a year that we need to learn against. In a year or two, people are going to look back and they go, oh, remember when we thought 2020 was bad? But now, oh my God. So the truth of the matter is 2020 is a wake-up call. 2020 is training time. And the next 4 years is actually training time. If you think 2020 is bad, wait till 2024.
this is another thing Casey says that I'm like, oh God. But, I think it's something that many of us have not thought of. We're just like, oh, everyone's on Facebook is like, oh, 2020 is such a bad year. And they just think 2021 that's good again. And it's like, what if that's not the case? So nobody's really wrapped their head around that. And that's something
that's a trap. Because because 2020 is so much of a change point that it's overwhelming people to pivot, to actually hunker, and that's a trap. It's not a time to hunker. It's a time to actually experiment, to change up, and to get ahead of it. Use what's happening to inspire you to work with the changes that are in play. And so actually, those who see this as a year of opportunity are moving ahead and growing. And if you try to keep doing what was old school, it's not going to go because it is a changing time period. So the good news is 2020 is a slice. The next 4 years is a powerful set of years to learn against. And after that, what does that look like? Well, that's more chaotic. What we know is if you get strong in these 4 years, you'll be ready for whatever throws at you. So all my students, when 2020 came around, literally all my students were like, oh my God, this is nothing. I'm like, yeah, it's nothing. Because we already were preparing for it because we knew it was coming. But we didn't know exactly what was coming. We just knew these changes were slowly manifesting. So instead of worrying about what it would be, we kept modifying ourselves to live as the changes needed to happen. So when 2020 came rolling on, the students and I were like, yeah, nothing's really changed. Our lifestyle already is, we were already working remotely, or we were already doing things in such a way
Mm,
that we already dovetailed into with the times. So if
yeah.
you work with it, evolve with it, you're get ahead of it.
Yeah, I was so thankful I had already moved online and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because and we're going to talk about lifestyle in a minute, I just could tell this wasn't working for my lifestyle anymore to run this clinic and be so worn out. And so I, feel so fortunate I made that change. I want to share a little funny story and then we'll move on to health. I bought this astrology book for 2020,
Mm-hmm.
around the first of the year from the astrologer I had gone to. And the book was like so gloom and doom that I just was like, what? And I just put it aside. I just didn't even remember it. And then I think it was like April, May that I saw it on the shelf again. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what he was talking about. So I got it back out. So from an astrological perspective, I think it's like a 40-year cycle. I don't know, something like that. But there's a
Right.
certain thing going on right now that has happened when other pretty major things have gone on, like World
Exactly.
War. So I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? So yeah, when we step back, there are cycles in life. The world is always changing. So just doing
So
it again.
I want to say something based on what you said. The
Sure.
book was doom and gloom. See, it's only doom and gloom when you're past oriented.
Mm,
If you look to the past, it's doom and gloom because it is a changing of what we had. However, the way I'm teaching is it's an opportunity.
yeah.
We grow
Yeah.
against it, we use it. And when something hurts, well, that's a lesson, and you turn it around into growth instead.
It's true. Yeah.
And so, actually, right now, we're living in a time of opportunity. And if you turn it around, it's a beautiful time. So,
Right.
right now, for instance, people are thinking this is a bad time to date. And actually, we've discovered the exact opposite. This is actually a really good time to date. People have been having better luck finding good partners right now than before COVID, ironically, because the
Are
people
people
dating are
being,
more serious.
yeah, I was going to say, are they kind of being more vulnerable
Right.
or open
So
or something?
it ends up being a good opportunity to date right now, which is counterintuitive because you think with COVID, you should be hunkering down. But what that's doing is the people who are fearful, who are hunkering down, are being removed from the dating pool. And the
Oh,
people in the dating
interesting.
pool are a little bit more proactive. They're not scared of the times. They're actually living more healthily. They're actually being more proactive, and actually it's improving your chances.
How interesting. Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
weird?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
my
I
point
feel,
is
uh
it's opportunity. Yes, it's great change, but it's also, if you evolve with it, a time of growth.
right. And I don't want, I don't want to disrespect some hard things that happen, but I know you see it online, like people, with their kids more, gardening more,
Hmm.
like realizing they don't need to, like me, I don't need to take a million trips. I know how to work out at home. Like there's just things that wouldn't have learned without this. So
Exactly.
let's get back into health. You said you're teaching me to be an expert on my own health, which is pretty ironic because you think I know that already. But with our own bodies, we get fearful, right? And I was mentioning to
Hmm.
Casey that I've been to the urgent care more in the last 2 years than in my whole life. And, partly he's saying, your health is changing because you're in a different age. Things are changing in your body. And it was good for me to hear and kind of realize, and it kind of taken me out of some fear mode and into more like, let's just kind of, if I have a new thing, like let's wait and see, or let's
Hmm.
slow down and listen to my body, or let's look some things up. You had a great story, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing it, about something that happened to you that freaked you out about in the middle of the night. Do you
Which story can you remind me?
Oh, like when
Oh
you
yeah, I know
fainted.
which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a good
So
example.
one of the things we have to realize about our life is our baseline is always changing. And the trouble is, if you're past oriented, what do you base your baseline? Who you used to be. Trouble is, we're changing. So as we age, our balances shift. And we have to adapt to those changing balances. One evening, I woke up, I got up to go to the restroom, and as I got up to go to the restroom, I passed out. I literally got up, walked 2 steps, and fell straight to the floor. Freaked out Julie, my wife, And I literally got back up. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Because I literally took 3 steps and it's passed straight out. And that kind of freaked me out because that's not a normal thing based on my past experiences. This passing out after you wake up is not a normal thing. And I ended up going to the doctor and I asked, what the hell is this? And he took one look at me. Oh, nothing to worry about. I'm like, what? It's like, it turns out this is called this. And it happens to older men, about 10, 20% older men just get this condition where they have to, their blood pressure shifts or the body isn't able to, what they think it is the body isn't able to rebalance the blood pressure changes. And so when you get up quickly while after sleeping, that shift of blood pressure causes you to pass out. And that's not quite this, but that's a simplification of what it is. And so it turns out all you need to do is, instead of getting straight up, as you get up, you sit first, you pause for a second, rebalance your blood pressure, and then you get up and then everything's okay. So it ends up being the solution to it is meditation. And now a lot of people would be freaked out by that and they would want medication. And the medication then would be not a treatment, it would be hide the symptoms. And then the medication will cause further and further problems that you would forever be catching up on. So in our culture, which is a medicated type of society, would actually respond to that saying, I need a crutch, I need something to force myself to not pass out, and it would cause more problems. When in fact, its actual solution was this 2 seconds of meditation as you get up to rebalance your pressures and then getting up. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it can be hard to accept that we are changing, but you know, for people on this call probably went through surgeries or different health crises, it did change you, you know. And when I talk about mold and I talked about it to your community, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it does permanently change you because you have to be more aware forever. And that's okay. I think it's okay to accept that and not like believe this kind of, or sell this kind of untruth that like you're going to be the same as before this ever happened. You really kind of aren't. Just like anything you go through, like if you go through a miscarriage or a car accident, you kind of like will never be the same because you can't erase that experience. It's changed you. So
but you can use it.
Yes.
The truth about maturity is maturity never stops. Trouble is people keep their maturity levels to an earlier state and they don't move on. Each maturity level gives you a perk and a disadvantage. So as I get older, the disadvantage is I have to move a little slower. In other words, my perceptual speed is a little slower. Can't react quite as fast. However, the advantage is my perceptual depth has gotten far deeper. So now I could perceive so much more and I could train that perception to do things I couldn't do when I was younger. So it's actually a constant shifting of gains and losses. But the problem is people only focus on the losses and they miss the gains because it's so oriented on the losses rather than seeing what you gain from that new maturity or that experience. I've had some tremendously, things that have almost killed me, food poisoning. But because of that, and literally was in the hospital for a week from that food poisoning, almost died. I learned a lot about it. I learned a lot about how to heal from something from that experience, and I could help people go through a similar experience. And because of that, it's made me a better healer. And so our negative experiences, if we look at them with acknowledgement, can become a gift. So for instance, I've been through one divorce. It was not a fun experience. But because I've been through it, I can be compassionate and I can understand the timing of it. And so now I help people work through divorce all the time and they go, oh my God. And because I help them become their own person, they always say the same thing. I would do this again. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I would do it again because I've now become my own person. Because in the old relationship, in the old situation, they weren't actually being themselves. They were giving up their power to make it work.
Right.
And so that horrible or tough situation actually is a hidden gift if you turn it to grow with it.
Yeah. I want to talk more about that work before we close, but you had wanted to talk about awareness expertise and lifestyle as far as health. Is
Mhm.
there any part of that we haven't covered yet? Maybe lifestyle?
So let's talk about expertise first. Our culture has taught people to give up their power to experts. That is useful when the expert has that data point that matches you perfectly. So when you have a situation that matches the expert's data point, they can help you. But when you have a condition or circumstance which falls outside that box of knowledge, they often do more damage than good. They could actually tell you to do the wrong things. Now, Bridgit is a good example here. She had experience, and by the way, I had similar experience with mold, that the system doesn't work with mold very well. The
Zero.
doctors don't understand the implications of mold. They don't understand how mold is actually a neurotoxin and causes neurological damage. They don't understand the ripple effects of what mold does. And so a lot of the symptoms you're dealing with can look like something else because it's a ripple effect and the actual cause is the mold. But the symptom is so many levels removed from the actual input, you don't necessarily see it. So now the problem is in the medical system, if you have a mold-based problem, doesn't see it. They're looking at the symptoms and all of a sudden they begin treating you for the wrong thing. What they do is they make a process of elimination, which is actually really inefficient to get to the real problem. And so that could be a problem because the mold meanwhile is still tearing you apart. So one of the truths is as we age, as we go through these times of change, COVID, scientists still don't understand what COVID's doing. I've been watching this very carefully because I worked in disease tracking and I've been trained as to be a healer. So I've been watching this from day one. And the fact is, they still don't know what it does. They're beginning to get it. It's been almost a full year. They're only beginning to understand what it does, which means a lot of the treatments at the beginning stages were wrong and could do more damage. They're not experts of it yet. They haven't built up their databases yet to understand it. And so that means you have to be careful with it because there's more to it than meets the eye. So the trouble is we have to become our own experts, and that's hard to do. We have to pay attention. So Bridgit had to become her own expert in mold detox, and she now is taking that and helping others. But how long did it take you to figure out the mold, for instance, Bridgit? 1, 2, 3 years?
To discover it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, more like 8 years.
So because the system didn't have the expertise to deal with it, it took Bridgit 8 years to become an expert. Now she knows how to deal with it, and she's a good resource. See, we all need to be doing this. We all need to be realizing not to give up our power to the experts, but we have to really begin empowering ourselves to watch our own life and become our own experts. So we know, no, this is me, this is my problem. And so it's really important to become your own expert and be aware of that because we have to realize the experts we've given our power to in this time of greater change, their expertise is off kilter. It's based on the past. It's not based on the current circumstances. So as things get more and more off rails, we have to take it more on ourselves to be aware, to learn to be aware, to track these things so we can heal ourselves along the way. So it's a challenge to be our own healer. And sometimes we do need outside experts, but sometimes we also need to be our own expert. And that's the truth. We need to be our own expert and also use the help of experts around us and merge the two together.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not a simple process.
No, it's not. It's very much what my community does, which I really admire about them. When I have a consultation, it's like pretty much like a colleague conversation. Like they know so incredibly much, some probably more than they realize. And it's still nice to have people that I work with you. I work with different coaches. It's nice to have people because like people who've been through it, like you said, that can help a lot, and that doesn't even have to be a paid expert. That can just be a friend or a website or whatever. So it's one thing I really admire. But I guess I learned in my own house recently, we're kind of never done. Like my body's changing, there's still more things I need to learn about my own health and experience. And maybe like you said, just counting the wins along with the losses as we age. So
and someone like myself, because I've seen so much, I'm able often to go, hey, have you considered this? And then help them on a track towards that. And that's why we need community. So one of the things I've done is create the Awakening Dragon community, which Bridget's a part of. And we have this wider pool that you can begin tapping into. And Bridget's created this community, and that's a wider pool. And so we have to accept we have these resources, our communities, and to share. We don't want to hide. We do want to begin sharing, because that way we can begin to spot how to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, yeah, it's really great. Yeah, and you know, this conversation is probably a little different than a lot of the experts I have on, but I just want to say, like, I value it so much, because if we just get too caught up in the minutia of symptoms and stuff, it can really hurt us. We're
It could
really,
distract you.
yeah, yeah, and I see that happen too. And then there, even with people who really have the best intentions, there's a lot of anxiety about what path, you know, what do I choose next? I saw that when I worked in fertility so much. It was like it was so much desire on the outcome that choosing the path got to be very mental and very challenging for people. And really, you kind of just need to take a deep breath and be your own expert, slow down, and from that place decide your next step. And that's hard. That's hard in our culture. So you talked a little bit about gaining like depth of awareness, even though you're slowing down. Maybe do you want to talk a little bit more about awareness or lifestyle and health?
So for lifestyle, we are what we live. In Taoism is a very holistic process. We're body, we're mind, and we're spirit. So if your spirit is sick, you'll be sick in your body. If your body is sick, you'll be sick in your spirit. They are interconnected. So in Taoism, we don't treat anything as independent. We treat it as all connected. So as a practice, we do teach Qigong, which is energy and motion work to keep the body, mind, and spirit healthy. We don't make it a separate part of our life. We make it an integrated part of our life. So when I'm walking across the room, I'm doing Qigong. I'm stretching out. And if I'm talking on a phone call, lots of times, if I feel a little stiff, guess what I'll do? I'll actually massage my arm as I'm talking. Why? Because we're not static. So if you're feeling an issue, you take care of it. You don't hold and bottle it in and make it worse. We have to flow with the life. We have to work with it as it flows. So right now, as everyone's listening to me, take a second. Sit back up. Rebalance yourself for a second. Be aware. Feel how you were watching, and because you were watching, you weren't moving. And that is a problem. So once in a while, do be aware and do reintegrate back into your life. Keep it moving. And so when you're working with Taoist practice, you're always working on all three. For instance, mind. What's mind represent? Mind represents your story. We don't hold one story, we hold a dozen stories. So the problem is when one of our stories is off, it throws everything else off. This is one of the reasons I do so much, because it's all interconnected. So as a Taoist master or as a Taoist teacher, you learn to see things from this bigger angle so you can pull out the threads and heal. Because oftentimes healing a small thread will have bigger implications later. So if you're having marriage problems, well, those marriage problems can cause health problems because you're holding yourself in and giving up your energy to make your marriage work. And next thing you know, you're generating health problems. And because you have health problems, all of a sudden, because you have health problems, your partner is staying with you because they're afraid that they can't leave. But ironically, then those health problems are actually destroying the marriage to the point after a year or two, the partner has to leave because it's too much. So there's this loop. And the marriage destruction ended up being on paper because of the health problems. But in fact, the marriage problems were earlier when there were other issues in the marriage that made more stress, that bundled up and created other problems along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So our stories are more interconnected to outcomes than we give credit for. And we're living with dozens of stories. And what happens if you're at work and you're working with a boss who is totally a dick? And that negative energy is bringing its way home. And all of a sudden you're coming home with that negative energy and you take it out on your child. You know, they are interconnected. And so now if I teach a person to be stronger in their lifestyle and they take that stronger lifestyle and work where the boss tries to say, put you down and you say, no, you can't do that. And you stand up for yourself, push back, all of a sudden it fixes all the rest of the parts of your life too. So the truth is body, mind, spirit, and it's all interconnected. But everyone's so focused on the physical life and everyone's so focused on one main story that you've been given, they're not willing to look outside that box. But as soon as you open up the box, your life expands into this beautiful flower of expression and kaleidoscopic experiences that make it magical. And Bridgit, you could testify to this because as we've been working together, as we help slow you down, all of a sudden options come up, right? And it changes. And you're no longer trapped, but also all these new options just pop up rather than creating more problems from a false piece of drama.
Yeah, I was definitely guilty of and may still be in the future. It's like if you're unwilling to let go of one storyline that you're really attached to, you're going to be in a lot of pain. But as soon as you let go, even as soon as you start to let go or be willing to let go, the universe seems to reward you with,
space,
new opportunities. Yeah, and your health can very much change from changing stressors in your life. So even though it's not a focus of my business and what I talk about, because it's not my expertise as much as yours, I 100% believe in it. And I can say from my mold story, it was definitely like aggravated and given an opportunity by my unhappy work situation, by difficult relationships. It does affect your health and it makes you more vulnerable. So just really important to trim those areas and just be aware of it.
So I'm going to teach everyone now a super powerful technique. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that's so powerful, it will change your life. Are you ready?
Ready.
Take 1 second. Breathe in. Just breathe. Breathe out. And here's the trick. Pause. Just pause. And in that pause, let it reset you. In that pause, let it open up what you see around you. See, most of the time, the problem is pause is neutral. And we jam ourselves because we always are pushing. And because we're pushing, we avoid to see the smaller solution that's around us. And the only thing you need to do is pause, take in, and then also you can change course. And it's a simple thing to teach. Pause 3 times a day randomly, just really random. Sit in the sun for a second and feel the warmth of the sun and pause. If you're feeling frustrated, your children are screaming and everything's going wrong, take a second, pause and resync. You're feeling tired, pause. 3 times a day, randomly pause. Do that for 2 weeks. And what will happen is you'll notice you'll catch little things before they become problems. You'll notice you'll be a little calmer, so you have that little extra strength to be kind to your child. You'll notice that instead of being tired, you'll pause, you'll resync yourself, and now instead of your boss ticking you off, you'll laugh him off. And you'll just avoid a life-changing conflict just because you pause to be a little stronger. Because when we're tired, we go into survival mode. And when we go into survival mode, our instincts are reacting, and those reactions often cause more problems. So when we pause, it allows us to step out from that survival mode into, hey, what do I need to do? And as 2020 rips through your life right now, as my ceiling just collapsed this yesterday, and the whole thing is like, we just pause. Okay, we'll deal with that this weekend. It's not a survival thing. It's just like, okay, we'll fix that. But if you make something a big deal, then it'll push you into more and more problems. So the simple act of pause, not very difficult, but it's a gateway to 1,000 different Taoist teachings, it turns out. We use the pause to open up into meditation. We use the pause into healing. We use the pause to expand our awareness. And then you'll see the most amazing things that you wouldn't have seen if you didn't pause. And your life becomes rich. All with 3 pauses a day, 5 seconds.
Put it in your calendar. Yeah, just so
Random.
just to remind you. It's so true. Yeah, as you were explaining that, I'm like, yep, that's reptile brain, right? And so much of us, we get, especially we're having a busy day, we just get like boom, 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 just reacting. And just taking a second to realize you get a choice in how you react, or there's other options than just flying off the handle. So exactly. I love it.
I'll give you an example.
Go ahead.
Just before this phone call, I actually had an emergency phone call, and I had one of my students, and life was just blowing up. And what did I do? I was like, pause, resynced, got
Mm,
them back on track. And that
mm,
emergency now is actually just a relatively, there's a big challenge in there, but now it's manageable because we paused and we weren't letting the panic get in the situation.
mm.
And so took 15 minutes, got them to pause. After this phone call, give them another call back, resync a few more things, get things a little bit more realigned. And after 3 or 4 of these little 15-minute phone calls, we'll get everything realigned back into order, and their life will be back to normal.
Mm.
But normally that would be the end of the marriage. If they were doing traditional things, that would be an ending point. Literally would be a
Wow.
divorce. It would be all over. But by pausing it, we could re-navigate everything back into a much better option. And it isn't
Mm.
that difficult.
Yeah, so helpful in a relationship because it's so easy to let a person, well, it's just so easy to be triggered, right?
And overreact, and
Then
then
everything's
you can
way
just pull it
worse.
back, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, this is a good segue. I wanted to talk more about your work. And obviously, there's quite a breadth of breadth, is that the right word, of what you do, but a lot of what you do is midlife work and
Mm-hmm.
marriage work, divorce and separation work, which is how I found you. Um, and I think that people are often going through that very quietly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want people, if they find this, and I hope they do, to know that you're such an amazing resource for any stage you're in. You don't have to say, "Oh, I know I want to get divorced," or "I don't know if I'm married." You can just say wherever you're at, just start getting some help. Or maybe you're a little unhappy at work or unhappy with something in your life, and you're ready for a change, but you don't even know what it is. Like, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what step you're in. I was in a very different stage when you and I met than I am now, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And you just guided me through all of that. You didn't influence me necessarily. You just
Because it's your
got
story. That's the
yeah,
thing. It's your story. So I'm just here to help you, show you the patterns where certain paths lead to, teach you the tools, pausing, be aware, take control rather than be taken control of. And that just expands your life out.
yeah. It's a very different kind of work, right? It's definitely not therapy or
No, it's not
um,
therapy at all. It's
no.
actually,
I'm trying to think to it to compare it to. I mean, it's kind of like coaching, but my sense of coaching, like coaching in its truest sense, is just kind of being a mirror and guiding. It's not like telling someone what to do. Just giving someone tools. You really helped me, with some crises, just like you mentioned that you just had a call about. So yeah, I'll repost your site here in the chat. You also got a lot of articles. You have this, group community that I'm a part of that I've learned a lot from. So if it speaks to you, if you're like, hey, I like this guy, I'm going through some changes in my own life, I would encourage you to check it out. His wife is also amazing and does a lot of kind of energy shamanism work. Is that correct?
meditation, shamanism. She also does, we both do the same thing. We're teaching kindness. And we use different tools. We teach the meditation, we teach the journey work, we do the relationship work, we do the business coaching, we do the transformational work. It's all really, see, the funny thing is it looks like we're doing a lot of different things. It's all the same thing, kindness.
Mm,
It's applied kindness. Apply kindness in your work, apply kindness in your family, apply kindness in your relationship, apply kindness to your body. It's all applied kindness.
mm-hmm.
And so the funny thing is, once I teach a person how to fix one of these things, they quickly see, because I show them, they could do it on the other parts, and they begin doing it, and it expands out.
True.
So when I'm helping you on your business, it's the same teaching as when I helped you in the relationship.
Yes, I also have a business coach, and she always ties the two together. She's like, "See how this is happening in both regions?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, you always like to find those parallels."
Because they are, because it's kind. So the root is kindness, and applying, working in essence, and just slowly working with them, being in control of your own story.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And
I just want to, thank you personally. You've been so invaluable to me in my own life, and I just love your community and the support you've given me, and that you just this really unique business you provide to the world. Anything? My mom is asking if you've ever been to Bhutan,
And
where
the
they
answer is
practice a
nope.
lot. No, not yet.
I know of Bhutan.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
went to this.
interesting country.
Yeah, I went to this area of China that it's still technically China, but it's sort of like Bhutan. It was pretty
Right.
amazing. Like everyone was just so happy. Um, Anything else you want to share to sum up, or any resources or anything?
I know you said we would talk about COVID. Ironically, we did talk about COVID.
You
The
did,
way
yeah.
the way we talked about COVID is be aware there is a disease that is still not fully understood, to work with it gently. Don't overreact to it, but do take good health, nutrients, work on your story. There's a lot of stuff COVID is stirring up. Look at what it stirs up
Definitely.
and address what it stirs up. If there's if there's fear around being around people, that's something to work on.
Mm,
You don't want to isolate yourself more. You don't want to dive in more. You want to work with that new dynamic of interpersonal relationship that's developing from it.
mm.
So the truth is, we don't want to wait. We want to work with what's being stirred up.
Okay.
Because the fact is, COVID's not going to go away. It's going to be around for 3 to 5 years. And after COVID, there will be the next disease like TB, tuberculosis, or other things.
This is the kind of fun stuff Casey lets you know about.
Well,
But
the thing
he's
is,
probably right. He's been right so far.
there's more going on than meets the eye. So
Yeah,
again, it's really important to pay attention, because it's by learning to work with it, you're also learning to work with what's up ahead.
true.
And then when
Yeah,
what's up ahead comes rolling through, it won't be a panic situation. You're like, yeah, whatever.
we'll be ready for the
And
next thing. Yeah.
because COVID is a domino. That's the funny thing. Everyone's looking at COVID as the big thing. It's not. It's a symptom of the problem. In other words, the bigger problem is the culture having this big change point. COVID is coming in at a weak point of our culture. That's why it's ravaging through bigger than it is, because the culture is weak. It's not able to respond to it effectively.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it tells us a clue. Guess what? There's going to be a little bit more of that. So learning to deal with what
Until
we
we
have
learn.
now will help you with what's up ahead.
Great.
So
Casey,
the issue is bigger than COVID. Anyway,
yeah, for sure. What's the name of your podcast? And I'll put that in the notes too.
Awakening the Dragon. Awakening Dragon Podcasts.
Awakening podcast.
Awakening Dragon. Yeah, Awakening Dragon Podcasts.
Okay, cool.
And basically is, if you become a patron, all the podcasts are available as patronage. So if you go to the website, you can go to the membership menu, and then you could become a patron.
Oh,
Eventually,
okay.
we're going to actually make some of the podcasts freely available in the next few months too. But right now, if you're a $1 patron, you get access to all the podcasts.
$1. People can probably swing that. Okay,
It's a $1
awesome.
patronage.
Okay.
This is support us to do it. Podcasts take a lot of work, it turns
Oh
out.
God, ways. Well, thank you, Casey, for your time. I hope that some people find the recording that just a perfect fit for them. I'm sure they will, and we'll keep talking about your good work, and we'll keep in touch.
And mahalo for all your good work. It's really fun to work with another healer. And so much mahalo.
Likewise, and thanks for everyone